By the year 1600, the jagged coastlines and interior plateaus of West Africa became the site of a monumental geopolitical collision. The Kingdom of Ndongo, a sovereign state defined by sophisticated agricultural networks and deep-rooted ironworking traditions, lay directly in the path of Portugal's expanding maritime empire. From their coastal enclave at Luanda, Portuguese colonial governors looked eastward. They sought two specific things: the legendary silver mines of the interior and a continuous pipeline of human labor to fuel the sprawling sugarcane plantations of their new colony in Brazil. For the Portuguese crown, this expansion was framed as an imperial mandate. To justify it, the governors in Luanda manufactured a casus belli, a formal reason for war, out of minor, everyday trade disputes. They expected the conquest of Ndongo to be a swift campaign. This assumption of superiority was driven by their monopoly on gunpowder and steel. They believed they were marching toward a broken kingdom. By 1622, the monarch of Ndongo sent his sister, Nzinga, to Luanda as a royal diplomat to navigate the jaws of the colonial apparatus. Governor João Correia de Souza intended to use this audience to demand absolute submission. As Nzinga entered the Grand Hall, she found the governor seated high above her in a velvet chair, while she was offered only a woven straw mat on the bare stone floor. This wasn't merely a meeting. The Portuguese had weaponized the physical space of the room. By forcing Nzinga into a lower position, they attempted to make their demand for submission feel like a physical reality. Nzinga recognized the tactic instantly. With a subtle gesture of her hand, one of her royal attendants stepped forward and dropped to all fours, offering her back as a human throne. By sitting on this platform, Nzinga raised herself to the exact physical height of the governor, upending the power dynamics of the room. She then bypassed the need for Portuguese translators. Having mastered their language by studying captured documents, she spoke to the delegation directly, removing their ability to filter the negotiation. Throughout the talks, she systematically dismantled their legal arguments. She explicitly refused to pay imperial tribute or acknowledge the suzerainty of the Portuguese crown, which would have formally reduced her kingdom to a vassal state. Instead, she secured a balanced peace treaty. The agreement guaranteed the return of Ndongo prisoners of war and established a mutual alliance against local marauders. For Nzinga, this meeting was the first step in a larger strategy. By establishing herself as a sovereign political equal in that room, she neutralized the psychological advantage the Portuguese had spent decades trying to build. But within 2 years, the treaty collapsed. Driven by their economic reliance on the slave trade, the Portuguese resumed their raids and backed a rival claimant to the throne after the death of Nzinga's brother. Nzinga realized the open savannas of Ndongo left her people vulnerable. She led a strategic retreat into Matamba, transforming the dense, isolated terrain into a natural fortification and a sanctuary for those fleeing colonial raids. In this wilderness, she adopted asymmetric warfare. Knowing the Portuguese army relied on rigid formations and long supply lines, her forces utilized hit-and-run tactics, ambushing those lines and retracting into the terrain before heavy weapons could deploy. By moving the conflict into the dense interior, Nzinga traded traditional, centralized defense for geographic asymmetry, successfully neutralizing the European technological advantage. However, Nzinga understood that localized resistance could only hold a global empire at bay for so long. She needed to look beyond her borders to the rivalries between European powers. In the 1640s, she forged a military alliance with the Dutch West India Company, the primary maritime rival to the Portuguese in the Atlantic. This alliance created a coastal pincer movement. Nzinga's elite land forces struck from the interior, while Dutch naval artillery attacked from the sea, leading to a series of crushing defeats for the Portuguese army. It was a rare moment in the 17th century. An African monarch successfully engineered a transcontinental coalition to push back the boundaries of a European colonial power. Long-term survival required more than local defense. It relied on Nzinga's ability to understand and manipulate the broader geopolitical struggles of the colonizers themselves. For 40 years, the Portuguese colonial government dedicated vast resources to her capture or assassination. Every campaign failed. By 1656, an exhausted Portuguese administration was forced to sign a comprehensive peace treaty. It formally recognized Nzinga's independent sovereignty over the kingdom of Matamba. She ruled as an absolute monarch until her death in 1663 at the age of 80, leaving behind a kingdom that had successfully defied the premier colonial juggernaut of the era. Long before the decolonization movements of the mid-20th century, Nzinga established a successful model for resisting imperial expansion. Her legacy proves that maintaining sovereignty against an empire required a leader who could outmaneuver the very systems of oppression used against them.